A few days ago, we got another big recession signal when the yield curve disinverted. What the heck does that mean, and why does it matter? So a yield curve inversion is a near-perfect recession indicator, and it happens when long-term loans are cheaper than short-term loans. So this is weird. Normally, you should get paid more to lock up your money for longer, so a 10-year bond should pay more than a 2-year. With an inverted curve, it's the opposite. Long bonds pay less. The reason this happens is because markets expect the Fed to cut rates hard. Why would the Fed cut hard? Because they expect a recession. They cut the rates to try and goose the economy with cheap money to take the edge off the recession they caused. By the way, you can follow along at home. The simplest number is the so-called tens and twos, meaning the interest rate on the 10-year bond minus the interest rate on the 2-year bond. So if you Google Fred, as in Fred Flintstone, and tens and twos, you will get it on a silver platter. But what's key here is when the curve evens back out, when it disinverts, it's one of the most reliable recession indicators. In fact, at least since 1976, every single recession has followed that pattern. Yield curve inverts for a while, and the actual recession starts once it evens out. Well, it just evened out on August 28th after over 2 years of inversion. That was the longest since the 1970s stagflation, suggesting we could be in for a big one. So what's next? Brought to you by Unchained.com. The reason for caring about indicators like yield curves is that recessions are generally announced long after they start. In 2008, for example, the NBER now says the recession hit in December of 2007, but back then, they didn't announce it until December of 2008, a full year later. That was long after stocks had collapsed and millions had lost their homes and their life savings. Now, stocks certainly did not see it coming back then. In 2008, they held up through May of 2008, 7 months into the recession, bedazzled with soothing press conferences from Fed Chair Bernanke and Treasury's Paulson how everything was perfectly fine until, like flipping a switch, it collapsed, at which point they all shucked about perfect storms. The yield curve now joins a parade of gold standard recession indicators. In recent videos, I've mentioned Sum's rule, which tracks unemployment, consumer spending, which telegraphs recessions, and real-world surveys showing fear and distress at recession levels. Recently mentioned how millennials living with parents has hit 1940s levels, how half of retirees are considering going back to work, and how missed bills or fear of losing their jobs is at the highest since 2008. Through it all, if there's one constant in protecting your life savings, it's believe what you see, not what you're told. They will never warn you of a recession because it's their job to gaslight you until the last possible moment. Okay, we'll be watching. See you next time.